All right, so I'm a pretty big thief, so I stole a lot of this presentation from Kathleen Jennings, who's going to be here tomorrow. She's awesome, and so anything you don't like in this presentation is basically her fault. So, anyways, resources at risk. Here's what I'm just going to give you an outline of what I'm going to go over, talk about it, and then summarize it. So. First, I'm going to give you a context to when we say resources at risk. I'm going to give it to you in the context of oil spill response. Second, we talk about identification tools. We were just introduced to the ESI map. That is just one of many tools that we use to prioritize the resources at risk and identify those resources at risk. We'll talk about some response considerations. She went over a couple of those. We'll go over a couple of more, and maybe some depth, depending on how much time we have. And then I'm going to talk about the ICS 232 form. I see there's one up here, so you guys have kind of been introduced to it, but I'll go over it in a little bit more depth, depending on how much time I have. And then finally, I'll summarize. You can get the hell out of here. So first, what are resources at risk? Well, it's actually a position. It's a position within the environmental unit under the planning section. If you guys are familiar with the ICS and all the sections there, we are in the environmental unit. It's usually conducted in California. It's generally conducted by an OSPR ES, such as myself or Josh, or there's be a couple other people coming in and out of here. A lot of times it's in conjunction with the NOAA representative or some other federal trustee, like Fish and Wildlife Service, and also again local agency representatives. I'm going to try to hammer that home quite a few times. My area is pretty big. It's almost all of Northern California. I know a little about a lot of places. Local resources know an awful lot about their spots, so we like to tap into that. And resources at risk, our main purpose is to set up site protection priorities. What gets boomed first, second, third, fourth, and so on down the line. And again, it relies on a number of identification tools, not just one, and we're going to see why not just one. So environmental resources at risk. So now we're talking about it in the general sense of the term. In the general sense, talking about like habitats, wetlands, beaches, estuaries, things like that. Talking about the birds, the sea otters, pinnipeds, cetaceans, all those things, and also aquatic resources. And down here, aquaculture too is one of the resources we definitely try to look out for, and it's not something that always pops first in everybody's mind. So I'm going to breeze through this. We went over a lot of this in the ESI talk. Rocky coasts, they're important. There's a lot of intertidal species there. Lots of recreational fishing that goes on along there. These guys are really important, as are sand beaches and dunes. Least terns, lots of T&E species, least terns, snowy plovers, often nest out there. It's usually a big haul-out area for pinnipeds as well. Tidal inlets and estuaries, migratory waterfowl stop there, and other migratory birds as well. Herring, eelgrass can also be found. That is actually Bodega Bay. Can you guys recognize that? Talked about the birds. This cute little fella here is a snowy plover. They're very they can be very easily oiled. They nest and hang out on beaches in the rack line. When the ocean deposits rack there, it's also going to deposit oil there as well. So these guys can get oiled. They're also T&E species, so we care very much about them. Seabird colonies. There's great concentrations, especially out of the Farallon Islands. So if these guys are going to get hit, an awful lot of them are going to get whacked. We want to definitely prevent that. Marine mammals, just like this guy, the sea otter, they float on top of the water. So does oil. they get whacked. They have to preen their fur. Can ingest oil. It's not good. Nobody likes to eat oil. And again, aquatic resources like this little salmonid here. And also invertebrates like abalone are also prone to getting oiled as well. So again, resources at risk. Who, for the purposes of this talk, it's me. Where again, environmental unit in the planning section, and what we identify the resources at risk and establish those priorities again on something like this, a 232 form that goes in. That is what we contribute to the daily IAP, is the protection prioritization. Excuse me. So this is just a little thing you guys have seen probably in a number of talks so far. So we said right down in there, and there's usually like a dotted line between the wildlife branch and us. We're in constant contact with what's actually out there, because being in the resources at risk, we are in the command center, not actually out in the field. So we rely on the eyes and ears of people that are actually out there, right, in real time. So this is what we do, sitting there solving all the world's problems. That's us hard at work. So the tools. So I've already talked about ESI maps. I won't go into any further. The ACP, the area contingency plans. There are six of them within the state of California. We are actually in the ACP2 area here. I'll go into those a little bit more detail. Wildlife recon, we use them to see what's actually out in the field right now. We have several databases that we use. The first one is the California Natural Diversity Database. Second one is the California Wildlife Habitat Relationship Database. These are both maintained by the state of California. We also use cultural and historical resource specialists. In the earlier talk, there's mention about Alcatraz and all the stuff going down the Deepwater Horizon with the historical resources. We want to include them in the process as early as possible so they don't hold up response. And again, last but definitely not least, they're actually the number one tool we try to use in the site-specific resources. Again, I have a large area. I know a little bit about what goes on in a lot of places. Don't work there all the time, so we definitely try to tap into who's there on a daily basis. So ESI maps, you guys heard about them, you know them, you love them. ACP again. There are six of them throughout California. They are coastal, and that's important to remember. OSPR responds to inland to occasionally. ACPs don't help you there. For our area here, it's from the Sonoma-Mendocino County border on the outer coast down to the San Mateo-Santa Cruz County border, as far east as the Port of Stockton, into the Delta, and as far north as the Port of Sacramento. So they're important to us. It's only the 9800 section, which is still super huge. And if you look over here, you see these big old binders over here. Just one of those is the 9800 section. So yeah, this is awful fun to carry around with you all the time. So they list environmentally sensitive sites up and down the coast. They have site summaries, like why each site is environmentally important. They list the response strategies there, and they also have a diagram, which is actually probably one of the most important parts. So here we go. Here's a picture of Monterey Bay. All these little red dots here are environmentally sensitive sites. You see the site number, the 200, 205, 210. That is the individual site, and 3 just denotes that is in the third ACP in California. So site 3-210 would be the San Lorenzo River Inlet. Here's the first page. Each sensitive site has 3 pages. The first page is the site summary. Gives you a description of the site, what's important, what species are there, kind of when they're there, kind of almost the same information as the ESI, except ESI is updated 7 to 10 to 15 years. ACPs are updated on a 3-year cycle, so they're much more current. And this is actually the most important part of the first page, phone number, to tap into your site-specific resources. Like when I hear spills going down at San Lorenzo River Inlet, I look through my ACP and look up this phone number there for the superintendent there. Second page is the site strategy summary. It lists how do you protect this site. It lists out in detail, and it lists your equipment needs right here, which I see there's a 215 up there. This goes on your 215 to get ordered for tomorrow, or if you're in the first part of response, what you're going to need for later that day. And this is a terrible picture. So this is the graphic representation of that response strategy. So the second, another resource we use is wildlife recon. These guys are out in the field. The call comes in 4 in the morning. Wildlife Care Network we activate. We say, hey, there's lots of oil spilled out there. There's probably going to be some wildlife impacts. They send out a search and collection team. They're by air, by boat, by land. They actually have eyes on the scene. We want to know what's going on, what's actually out there, so it can help us prioritize what should be protected first. Yet another tool we use is a database. It's called the California Natural Diversity Database. It lists what species are out there, the dates observed, who saw it, when it was seen. It's continuously updated. It's updated once a month, so it's even more current than even the ACP. And CNDDB is throughout California. Remember, I said ACP and ESIs are only on the coast. This goes inland as well. And you get a graphic representation. Again, this is absolutely atrocious, but a graphic representation of what species are out there, where exactly they are, when they were seen. We use this as a GIS layer that can be displayed in the situation unit, or it's usually displayed within the environmental unit on, hey, this is what's out. This is what's possibly out here. Second database we try to use, which is way less useful. It's more of a predictive model. Again, this is throughout California, so it's inland as well. There's no ACPs, no ESIs to use, so we try to use this. You're going out to, let's say, the desert, San Bernardino or something, They'll say these are the type of species that could be found out there. Unlike CNDB, there's no graphics. It just gives you a list of species. I mean, it's better than a sharp stick in the eye, but you use what tools are available to you. And cultural historical resources. This one is something we don't have any control over. It's it's a person we try to tap into. It's the SHPA, the State Historic Preservation Officer. They keep the location of historical and cultural resources generally pretty secret, like Native American burial grounds. They don't want people out there desecrating them and stomping on the burial grounds, or whatever, drinking 40s out there or something. But so we have to tap into a person. They tap into the California Historical Resource Information System database. They tell you, hey, yes, there is cultural resources in this area. They don't tell you exactly where, but they say in this area, if you guys could kind of protect, this area here, it's of a high historical value. So the person, we generally incorporate early, because if you don't, they hold up response like it's kind of been going down in Louisiana down there. So I'm going to just try to breeze through these a lot quicker. Site-specific resources, again, these people know what's out there, entrance, egress, staging areas. Definitely try to make use of them. So all this stuff gets listed on your ICS 232. It looks slightly different from that because that's the 232A. So some considerations, whether you have listed species out there. You have a T&E species, 2 sandy beaches. One has T&E species, the other one doesn't. The one where the T&E species are listed is definitely going to get top priority. There's any environmentally sensitive sites. again, if one beach is listed as an environmentally sensitive site, the other one isn't, the environmentally sensitive site gets priority. There's cultural historical resources out there. Also helps in prioritization. Again, just so you know, a wetland would definitely get more priority over a sandy beach. As discussed in the previous talk there, you stomp oil down into the wetland, yeah, it's going to be there for years and years. It's relatively easy to clean up off of a sandy beach, pretty hard to clean up out of a wetland. So you don't want, the best thing is to not let it get oiled. Cultural historical resources, again, if you know that there's an area that has some historical value, you definitely want to protect it. So again, all this gets listed on your 232. So I listed a couple of sites here in Monterey. Monterey Harbor, that would get a priority 1. It's a pinniped haul out and aquaculture area. The jetty within the harbor would also get priority because it's a haul out in a bird roosting area. And then maybe sort of counterintuitively, Monterey State Beach would be listed second, and even though it has T&E species, long sandy beaches, not a whole lot you can do to prevent it from getting oiled. Boom doesn't really, as you're probably hearing another talk, boom doesn't do much out in the open water, and sandy beaches they're subject to a lot of wave action. Boom's pretty useless out there. So, but what we did, we listed out there is we contacted the state parks regarding pre-cleaning. Again, that was mentioned in an earlier talk of the Monterey State Beach. So we don't want any rack to get oiled. You try to move it up above the tide line, because if it gets oiled, that becomes hazardous waste. And then you incur an extra cost, and you don't want that. So the state parks, we get them to provide a biological monitor to help avoid any impact to snowy plovers if they happen to be nesting out there. Excuse me or not. So excellent. So to summarize, I told you about resources at risk in the context of spill response, listed some identification tools, talked about some of the considerations, and gave you an overview of the 232. So that's the talk. So thank you. Is there any questions?